Well, a very good morning to all of you. Let's have some more discussion on poetic diction. In our previous lecture, we understood that diction is the choice and the order of the words within a poem. It is the choice of the words and arrangement of the words in a given poem. So we have discussed some examples as well, and these words can serve multiple purposes. The choice of the words is made by the poet with different purposes, and even their arrangement is made in a very different manner. So, the presence of the word and the arrangement of the words matters a lot in a piece of poem. And because of this choice of words and arrangement of words, the poem as a whole can be read on many different levels. We can understand the poem on many different levels. So when we talk about diction, by now it is clear that diction is the choice and arrangement of the words. That was simple definition you should keep in your mind. Choice and arrangement of words in a given poem. So when we talk about diction, we should we should consider different meanings that the words may have. Means word may have different meanings, or even the words in a poem may have different meanings. And even their arrangement in the poem contributes or changes the meanings of those words. So we need to understand that. The way they are arranged in a given poem can contribute to the meaning and even change the meaning of those words. So it is the language, as I mentioned earlier. Poetic diction is the language which includes word choice and syntax. Syntax means the arrangement. Okay. So that makes poetry different from other forms of writing. Poetry is different from novel, a short story, or an essay, or a scientific essay, a scientific information, or day-to-day language. So all these forms of writing or speaking are different from poetry because poetry makes the choice of words in a different manner. So we understand that poetic diction refers to the operating language of poetry, the way language functions, operates in poetry. So it is the language employed in a manner, as I mentioned earlier, that sets it apart from other kinds of speech or writing. And poetic diction involves the vocabulary, the phrase structures, the grammar, etc. I had given you some example in my previous lecture as well. For example, when we say he came down can be said in a different manner. Down he came, down he came. In Marathi as well, for example, to ala ahe. This is the statement, but it can be made poetic by rearranging the words. Ala to ala. I was the ala to. So that can change the emphasis, the appealing, that can change the appeal of the words. So now we shall have one definition of poetic diction by Owen Barfield. In his book, Poetic Diction, A Study in Meaning, which was published in the year 1928, Barfield defines poetic diction. I quote now: when words are selected and arranged in such a way that the meaning either arouses or is obviously intended to arouse aesthetic imagination, and the result may be described as poetic diction. When words are selected, choice is made, and then they are arranged, they are ordered in such a way that different meaning arouses, or it is the poet has some intention to arouse in such a manner that you get aesthetic pleasure. Aesthetic means ultimate pleasure, beautiful. Aesthetic is related to beauty. Okay, so aesthetic imagination is aroused, and such kind of selection and arrangement of words to arouse aesthetic imagination is called poetic diction, according to Barfield. So, through the discussion, we understand that a poem's diction is made up of two elements. First is the vocabulary that the poem uses. In my previous lecture, I talked about vocabulary. Vocabulary means the collection of words in a given language. The word Shabda Sangraha is used in Marathi to refer to vocabulary. Shabda Sangraha, that is the word in Marathi. And vocabulary in English means the collection of words, the group of words in a given language. At the same time, the poem uses syntax. Syntax, as I mentioned earlier, is the arrangement of the words selected by the poet. So when the poet makes the choice of words, means he selects vocabulary, we should try to understand it. As a reader of the poem, we should start by analyzing the poem's vocabulary. When you want to understand the poem, what should you do? You should start analyzing. Okay, analyzing. I hope you are familiar with the term analysis. So the reader is we should start by analyzing the poem's vocabulary. So what should we consider in it? We should consider whether or not the words are simple or complex. Whether the words are simple or complex. I mean, there can be simple words, such as, for example, we say cat, dog, love, etc. Simple words. But there can be complex word as well. For example, we say nationalization, internationalization, domestication. So such words are complex words. So we should understand whether the words are simple, means they consist of one morpheme, or they consist of many morphemes. Now, for example, a word like love, the way when the poet makes the choice of the word love, it has many definitions, and these definitions depend largely on how the word is used, in what context. So love may have different meanings, different definitions, based on the context in which the word is used. So love, as you know, refers to a relationship between two people. So this meaning may be simple, but if the word has many, multiple meanings, then it becomes more complex by in terms of its meaning, in terms of structure as well. Love is simple in structure, but it may have multiple meanings. When the word conveys multiple meanings, many meanings, multiple means many, then it becomes a complex word. So, after analyzing the key vocabulary of a poem, then we should turn to the syntax. So this is the procedure that we should follow in reading a poem. First of all, we should analyze the poem's vocabulary, means the words used by the poet. And then we should turn to the syntax. Syntax means how these words are arranged in that poem. So, as I mentioned earlier, syntax is the way a poet arranges the words within a poem. Now let's understand That syntax can be ordinary or unusual. Ordinary means okay, very common, the way now we are talking, for example, in a day to day communication, or it can be unusual as well. Unusual means something different. So I told you just now an example. He came down, down came he. In my last lecture, I had given you an example of Jack and Jill went up the hill. So we can say Jack and Jill were two friends, they went up the hill. Instead of saying like that, the poet says Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down, okay, and broke his crown. Jim came tumbling after. Now this is how the arrangement is made. So the poetic speech is different from the ordinary speech, but how? Now, ordinary syntax, when you talk about, is an arrangement of words, the way we arrange the words in a data communication. In Marathi as well, in any language, the words are arranged. That is ordinary syntax. But in a poem, it is unusual. Usual and the opposite of usual is unusual. Usual is regular, common. But unusual means uncommon, not regular, extraordinary. Ordinary and opposite of ordinary here is unusual. So unusual syntax is an arrangement of words that deviates from the way that people usually speak and write. Now we shall see one example. She took an apple from under the tree. Okay. Now this same sentence can be rearranged to create unusual syntax. Now look at the way this sentence is arranged. From under the tree, she took an apple. She took an apple from under the tree is an ordinary syntax, but from under the tree, she took an apple. So here inversion is used. Inversion is the rearrangement. Or see, from under the tree took an apple. So this is how the arrangement can made different, can be made different. Okay. So another critic named Emerson Marx says that the wittiest theoretical legacy means something which you get from your forefathers, Warsa, that antiquity and the Renaissance passed on to neoclassicism. Means these are the different periods that you are going to study in your paper. Renaissance was the 16th century period, 15th and 16th century period in Europe and England. And then neoclassicism is the 18th century. Okay. Means last 17th century or late 17th century and early 18th century period. So this period means from Renaissance to Neoclassicism, the style of poetry was passed on, and the style of poetry was ornamental one. Ornament is jewelry, for example, earrings, necklace, etc. is ornament. So the way we decorate ourselves, same was the case of style of poetry. Same is the case. The language is decorated. The ornamental conception of poetry was there. So till the dawn of Romanticism means in 1798. Okay, means in 1798 Romanticism started in England. Till that time, writers thought that the language of poetry should be decorative one, as we decorate our body. For example, girls decorate themselves. They go to beauty parlor and apply certain cosmetics. In the same manner, or the way we dress ourselves during our weddings, etc. Similar in the case of poetry, according to the poets who wrote during the Renaissance period, means during the 16th century, 17th century, and 18th century. But by the end of 18th century, this conception changed, this understanding changed. So there took place changes in poetic fashion. There were reforms. The Romanticist poets started using what we call simple language, the language of ordinary people. So the romantic critic Samuel Johnson, in his work *The Life of Dryden*, says, "No poetical diction, no system of words at once refined from the grossness of domestic use and free from the harshness of terms appropriated to particular arts." Means no words from our day-to-day life were used in poetry. Words too familiar or too remote defeat the purpose of a poet. According to Samuel Johnson, what he says, the words which are familiar to us or the words which are very distant, which are not familiar, both are not acceptable in poetry. Both are not acceptable. But the romantic poet William Wordsworth, in his preface to the collection of poems, Lyrical Ballads, says, argued against this kind of ornamentation, this kind of decoration of language in poetry. He went against the thinking of the Renaissance poet, the neoclassicists, etc. So for Wordsworth, the essential identity of poetic and non-poetic language, he just emphasized on that. He insisted on it. And he thought that a poet should use the real language of men in any situation. A poet should use the day-to-day language, the real language, the language spoken by ordinary people. For example, you might know Bainabai Chaudhary in Marathi. She used the language of common people. So that becomes appealing. So this is how Wordsworth brought a kind of revolution. Okay, he revolutionized the idea of poetic diction by connecting it to speech. So we understand how this particular vocabulary and syntax, means arrangement of word, are correlated, how they interact, okay, how they have relationship. For example, the way the vocabulary and syntax come together and interact with one another plays a large role in conveying the speaker's attitude or the tone of the poem. Okay, the speaker's attitude or the tone. If you read Marathi poets, for example, Basi Mardekar, Arun Koradkar, Usmagraj, Mangesh Padgaonkar, you will realize that they have got different way of arranging vocabulary and syntax. So the tone of poem, the attitude of the poet is conveyed through. Certain feelings are, evoked in the reader's mind. Okay, and even it helps to create mood, and even it contribute to the theme of the poem. Therefore, when we talk about the poem's diction, we should examine the effect that the vocabulary has on the syntax and the effect of the syntax on the vocabulary. So both things should be understood. Now we shall see one example and then we shall stop a discussion in poetic diction. We have taken the example of a poem by Emily Dickinson, an American poet. The title of the poem is Because I Could Not Stop for Death. Because I Could Not Stop for Death. In this poem, Emily Dickinson uses simple vocabulary and a combination of usual and unusual syntax. Ordinary and unordinary, means extraordinary or unusual syntax. Now, for example, in this poem, she uses the standard dictionary definitions of the words like kindly and stopped. Instead of more complex terms, she uses these words kindly stop for me. And the effect of this vocabulary is that it has a colloquial or casual. Colloquial means the language of common people, ordinary people. Or casual, आपण बोली भाषा म्हणतो, colloquial means. Or casual and everyday language is used in this poem. Okay. Instead of using formal dictions, he uses casual. So the tone of the poem contributes to the effective personification of death. So in this poem, the tone contributes to the personification. Personification means attribution of human qualities to non-human things. So in this manner, what we understand through the discussion is that a poetic diction is very important element of a poem.